ingrained separation for species. Each species will have a different pattern. Okay? So they can live in the same place as long as they have these patterns and sexual selections and so forth going on. They are prevented from mating. Okay? That basically boils down allopatric and sympatric in the simplest way with an example of how that could be done. Okay? So the rest of a few of these other slides are going to concentrate on allopatric speciation, and then we'll get into the more complex sympatric speciation. From the beginning, you can sort of lay some foundation, and you can say, well, what happens more common? What is more commonly something that we see, or what is a stronger, something that we would expect to see more often than not? And of course, that's allopatric. Because once you physically vary or something, there is no ifs or buts about it. You don't have to modify some behavior or anything. It's just you're just separated. So that is the more popular, more common, and more strong of the separations. Of the reproductive isolations. It does, because there is a separation, then we don't have to worry about something looking different or having a different pattern. We don't have to worry about that. They're separated no matter what. Okay. So the species can look very similar to each other, even though they're physically separated, because they don't have to bother to change their appearances. Maybe the chemistry, or maybe what they prefer to eat or not, things that you may not see can be changed enough so that they are new species. However, if something is sympatric, then we don't see that as common, because the chance of hybridization, making hybrids, is higher, and gene flow. And so in order to prevent that from happening, they have to go through another step, and they have to look different. They have to have some differences. So we tend to see different species in a sympatric situation being obviously different. You can eyeball them and say, oh boy, there's two different species there. Okay? And we tend to see that more often in a sympatric. Okay? Does that make sense? So those are sort of like ground rules that we can use. Other kinds of rules that we might follow is that the length of time. If you separate two species, the longer they're separated, the less chance it is that if they try to come back and mate, they'll be successful. Okay? So the length of time makes it more inevitable that they will be non-breeding species, new species. Okay? Also, distance. Okay? If you have an organism that's on an island and it just moved there from the mainland, okay, the further the island is, the less likely you're going to get a gene pool mix. Okay. Now, if you have an island that's like 10 feet away from the mainland, well, you probably really don't have much of a separation. Okay. Versus an island that's 500 miles off the coast, you definitely are going to see some intense separation going on. So the distance away also affects speciation. Okay. What else can we say about speciation? Maybe we can summarize that. The longer, we can say time, will affect how related something is. Okay? It will affect the relationship. The longer the time. Another factor would be we also see time will make for more diversity. Okay, diversity increase. So the longer the time, the less related they are. The closer the time, the more related they are. The longer the time, we expect to see more diversity being developed. Okay. if they do speciate, and if they are recently speciated, then they have a greater chance of hybridization, of hybrids. Okay? So the less time, the more related, the more recently speciated. We can call them different species, but they're quite not different enough to where they can't stop mating, and they can still produce a result of that mating. But the biological species definition tells us they're different species because maybe the hybrids don't work. They just don't. And we looked at that the other day. We looked at hybrid viability and problems with hybrids. Whenever you see a physical barrier, then you can expect to see allopatric speciation. Okay, physical barriers. The greater the physical barrier, the more chance that you'll have allopatric. The less physical barrier or no physical barrier, okay, then we tend to see sympatric. There are other barriers, but they won't be physical. So those are like little ground rules that we could sort of use to try to determine. Also, you might, here's another thing too that's important, maybe we'll get to this later, is that once, if you have a mainland species and you have an island species, okay, even though they have come from the mainland species, they differentiated on the island, given time, because the island is, you might say, safer than the mainland, less competitive than the mainland. I know you're saying, well, gee, an island is smaller, would they compete more? Yes, but remember, an island receives new gene pool, and they don't have the predators that you may have on the mainland. So that's what I mean by safer, okay? So an island, and you have a mainland, if you were to introduce a mainland, what we would call, I guess if you were to call a human that can do just about anything, is a jack of all trades, right? If you introduce a mainland species onto the island, in most cases that will outcompete and wipe out the island species. Even though they're closely related, they will be wiped out. Okay? That's an important ecological consideration using our information about evolution. Okay? And that has happened on the Galapagos already. Okay? There is a, the endemic species are marine iguana, land iguana. There's a number of plants that are endemic to the Galapagos. There's the Galapagos tortoises. There's the finches. Those have all been diversified on the island. Okay, they separated from the mainland, and they diversified on the island, but they diversified without predators. The cormorant was the example we saw in the picture. Okay. So one of the problems is that the Galapagos Islands was used as a stop-off. You might say a rest stop for the merchants, the Spanish merchants, the English merchants, and you name it. Okay, because they were merchanting with South America, Africa, and the Orient, and so forth. And so the Galapagos was a stop-off. Right? Stop off, get some water, you know, clean up your ship a little bit, grab a couple of tortoises. They last for months without food or water. So you don't have to refrigerate them. Just keep them alive and then eat them when you're ready. So collect some Galapagos tortoises and a few iguanas. Finches don't have much meat, so forget them. They're hard to catch. But anyway, it was a stopping point. Oh, wouldn't it be a good idea if we stopped here next time and we let off some of our goats to graze, so then we can have goat meat on Sunday and tortoise meat on Saturday or something. We don't have to eat goat meat, we don't have to eat tortoise meat 7 days a week. We can have goat meat once in a while. So we're going to drop some goats off. And all those rats that you didn't know got a free ticket from Spain or from your merchant countries. All those varieties of mainland rats, which Galapagos had no rats. Well, they had a black rat. They had one rat, but no other rats. All those other kinds of rats on the island. What else can we put on the island? Cats, right? You have cats on the ship because you have rats on the ship. That's a given. So you bring your cats. They eat the rats. They're happy. You don't have to feed them. They get loose. They get on land. Whoops, we're missing 3 of our cats. Have you seen them, Captain? No. Oh, I guess they're on the island. Oh, well, we don't have time. We've got to leave. You know, there's a warship coming over the horizon there. Those are the Portuguese. We've got to get out of here. So the islands are polluted. The Galapagos iguana eggs were being eaten by the rats. The rats destroyed just about everything, or could. The goats competed with the tortoises, and on and on and on. So you can see it can be devastating. Evolution works, and it's for a purpose. But when you start to upset it and put something else in the mix, you really, if you don't understand this kind of stuff here, you can devastate the situation. Okay, so let's take a look at some allopatric speciation. Okay? The cormorant would be an example. Okay, the cormorant on the Galapagos Islands couldn't fly anymore, but boy was it a good swimmer. It could outswim any winged, huge winged cormorant. Okay, thus drag. The definition of a barrier is also dependent on the species we're talking about. Okay? A barrier might be a barrier for one species, but not a barrier for another. Okay? So, for example, a canyon may create a barrier for a rodent, like a squirrel, but not for birds. Coyotes can travel quite far, climb. They're quite large compared to a squirrel. So the squirrel is probably going to be affected by that canyon. But the bird, that canyon is no barrier whatsoever. Okay? Pollen, we've got to give equal time to plants. Pollen is another situation. Some pollen are air-driven, and some pollen are collected by insects, and some pollen mainly just drop and pollinate the plants nearby. So it depends on the plant and how they're using to disperse their pollen on whether or not this would be a barrier to them. So now we're sort of thinking out of the box and we're seeing all the possibilities here. We can say, yeah, a canyon is an allopatric barrier. Okay, but we can't make that statement because we don't know what animal we're talking about. But it's likely it would be, though. So these are two squirrels, ground squirrels, that are, or chipmunks, if you want to call them that are speciated. Okay? The first letter is the genus, abbreviated, and then we have the species, and you can see the species are different. Okay? And, oh, by the way, this is where because we're getting into taxonomy, you had a taxonomy lab, and in order to get you to use the taxonomy, okay, we have to take certain measures. That's been working really well over the years, and that is whenever you write a scientific organism, okay, whenever you write the genus and the species, then you have to write that different than the other text that you're using. So in other words, if you're handwriting it, it has to be underlined. Even though you're turning in a picture and you said this was a paramecium, you still have to underline it. Okay? If you're typing something, it has to be italicized. And you have to use the proper way of writing the capital letter for the genus and the small letter for the species, okay? If you don't, then you may lose some points, okay, along the way. If you're taking a test, and I'm asking you what this thing is, it's a genus, species, of something, or a genus, and you write it, you don't do anything about it, then you'll lose a point for that, okay? Over the semester, this keeps on going. Every time you turn in a paper, you don't do it correctly, you're going to lose a point for that question because it's not there. By the end of the semester, I hope to have everyone with a large class like that, maybe 3 of you will not be able to do it, okay, by the end of the semester. But when I didn't do this before, it just says, come on guys, you got to watch this, you got to do this, this is what's expected. If you're going to write, you know, don't embarrass us here. If you go off to a university and you start writing stuff and these people are saying, well, where did you get your education? What are you doing here? Don't do that, okay? Well, when I didn't do anything about it, I would have at least half the class that I was still pulling my hair out trying to grade non-scientific names. So, it works. It really works. If there's points tacked to it, it really works. So that's what I will do. All you have to do is be conscious of it, and then you will learn. See? You will learn. You do not italicize or underline anything above a species. Okay? You do not do, it's only the genus species that you do this to, okay? In other words, if you're writing a phylum and you underline the phylum, that's incorrect. And you'll lose a point, okay? If you're using the name of the phylum or the name of the genus, anything from genus on up, if you're using the name, the actual name of that taxon, then you need to capitalize the first letter, okay? Capitalize the first letter. If you don't, then you're not giving me a scientific name. If you're just saying, well, this is one of the phyla, and you're using the word phylum, then you don't have to capitalize it. See? Or the word phylum itself is not capitalized, not treated in any different way. If you say, well, this is in echinoderm, okay? The phylum is Echinodermata. That is capitalized first letter. If you're saying this is one of the echinoderms, you're using it as a descriptive term, then you do not capitalize it. Okay? So that's your English lesson. Those are the traditional ways of working with scientific names. It's not hard. Where it's going to become difficult for you is that you're looking at a green plant, algae, and I ask, what is the name of this phylum? So then you write, oh, I'm going to cover all the bases here. I'm going to capitalize chlorophyta, and I'm going to underline it. That should cover all my bases. No, underline is incorrect, so you can lose a point. You see? You think that's hard, but believe it or not, it is actually easy when I'm getting people that just automatically, at the end of the semester, do that. Okay, to correct it. So I needed to bring that up really quick when we were talking about genus species. Because a couple of you were not many, but a couple of you were already not italicizing Homo sapiens. You were just writing it out. Okay. And Dryopithecus, the other skull. You were not properly writing this general. So I just thought I'd bring it up so you don't. I didn't take any points off this time. Okay, so here's our another problem. There's 15 species of snapping shrimp. Who knows what a snapping shrimp is? How many of you have ever gone into a lake, or especially a bay or some body of marine water maybe, and dived underneath? Let's say if you're in a deep area, and you just dive underneath and you're in an area where there's some leaks and stuff like that, and you hear all this crackling, like that. Any of you ever done that? Wow. Well, if you do, it's sort of scary, because you dive down there, you don't hear anything on the surface. You dive down there, and all of a sudden it's this loud crackling, and you're going, oh my gosh, it's something is breaking apart underneath there, and I may get sucked into whatever it is. You know, your mind just runs away. But the snapping shrimp are cracking. They're pinchers. They have big chew heads, and they snap, make a loud sound, and the sound waves stun their prey, and they can catch the prey faster. It stuns them for a moment, and they can grab the prey. So they're doing it to hunt. And there's thousands of those things in there, so you know they're not all hunting at the same time, but there's a lot hunting at the same time as well. So that's what you hear. So these are the shrimp that we're talking about. Okay, the genus is Alpheus. And so another unique thing about this, or another interesting thing, is that this is a form of speciation that was done along the Panama area. If you don't know anything about the geography, there's North America here, there's South America here, there's Central America, and Central America is sort of a little strip. And the reason that this is called Panama is because that's the name of the country. There's Panama, there's Costa Rica, there's starts with the G, what is the one right above it? Nicaragua, and so forth. Okay, those are little countries over there. And they're not very thick because the strip is very, and we call that an isthmus of Panama because it's so thin. Okay? Now the isthmus wasn't there 10 million years ago. The isthmus was part of the seafloor. And only when the water level started to lower, okay, and movements of the earth and so forth, you start to see land appear. And this was gradual though. Over 9 million years, the Panama Isthmus was finally formed. Okay? And so at some point we had to put in a little canal because we saved a whole lot of time if you had a canal and you're in the Atlantic Ocean or the Caribbean and you wanted to, you know, do some trade and take a shortcut. Otherwise, your only option is to go around the tip of South America. That takes a lot more wind, food, people, whatever, okay, and especially time. So, but let's just assume we're only looking at the isthmus, okay? When the isthmus starts to separate, we find that there's 15 species of shrimp on one side that can be correlated to 15 species of shrimp on the other side. And genetically, one shrimp here is very closely related to another shrimp on the other side. Another shrimp is different, but related to the other side shrimp. So the Atlantic side or Caribbean side has, or the Gulf side if you want, has a shrimp that is very closely related to another shrimp on the other side of the isthmus. Okay? Also, these shrimp all have different habitats. So you have some that like to live on the bottom, some like to live in a little more shallow area, and so forth. Some like to live in caverns and caves and stuff, and some like to live on the open sand. So they all have different habitats. But if you're a sand dweller on the bottom, you have another sand dweller on the bottom that's your sister, recently evolved species. Okay? So, this sort of explains what I just explained. Okay? It's sibling species that live in the deepest water diverged first, because remember, this is getting up, the water's, the isthmus is forming, it's coming up. Okay? So if you're on the bottom, let's say you're underwater one day, 1 million years, and then before you know it, your bottom is now land, so you still need to move down to the bottom, because that's where you like to live. So now you're in deep water. I mean, you're in the same depth, but all of a sudden, you can't see your neighbor across there anymore. Okay? You're still at the same depth, but you're on the other side of the isthmus, and all your friends are on the other side. Okay? Regions with many, this is the same thing. So I want to make sure you have enough information. Yeah, there you go. Let me show you something else here. There's distance and time. See, I wrote that again, boldface for you. And you should have something like this. Right? So, can you see that okay? So, we're going to work in pairs, okay? And 2 or 3. And I want you to look at number 1, okay? This describes what's going on here. So let me move this down a little bit. This says here, in the ocean, on either side of the Isthmus of Panama, this is the isthmus, are 30 species of snapping shrimp. Some are shallow water, some are adapted to the deep water. They're different habitats. There are 15 species on one side, the Pacific side, and so let's say these are the Pacific side here. And there are 15 species on the Atlantic side. Okay, now of course we only put 5 of them up there. I mean 5 on this side, 5 on this side. The Isthmus of Panama started raising about 10 million years ago. So, in the following figure, the isthmus separates the Pacific Ocean on the left and the Atlantic Ocean on the right. The seawater on either side of the isthmus is separated into 5 habitats. The deepest being 5, and the shallowest being number 1. This is species different habitats. A5, Pacific 5, Pacific 4, Pacific 3, Pacific C. That's how that's used. So your question is, in which habitat should one find snapping shrimp most closely related to the shrimp that live in habitat A4? Okay, so look at the question, look at your choices, talk to your partner, and let's see how you come up with it. Okay. You might want to say why the others are not true, okay? Why the others don't work. Why the one works and the others don't.
In which habitat would you find one? So in habitat A4, which even though they're like evolving apart from each other, they're at the same depth.
Okay, A is Pacific Ocean and B is Atlantic Ocean. Can you just say
You can ask me questions if I walk around. Okay? If you want to ask a question, I'll answer the question.
The youngest, yeah.
You're looking for A4, right?
It says A1/A5 and B1/B5.
Well, you're looking for one A4, so it's B3.
Because it's like saying like A1.
One side is A, one side is A, and one side is B. So
one family is like,
Yeah.
and then the men are different.
The youngest, at the bottom, there's not really much institution, so there's some.
How do we define that?
Or maybe the other way around.
We're actually
Any species from any one of the because he said that
If they originated, yes, but if they originated from the south, how do you get to the
it will be
if they live in
it wouldn't be
are
before.
they gonna cross over that distance?
Honestly,
The water would still have to be there.
Already then what could be the difference? They are in the same well the water is water.
You know what I mean? I can't even hear you. Oh, you were saying the top one, the top one
It depends on the
youngest because the water level by the time it goes down, you know, it wasn't. It's not that far long ago.
Okay, the talking is starting to simmer down, so let's look at this. So,
I would be like saying
all those answers, A, B, C, D, or E, just number one, that's all we're doing right now. C, so B4.
yes.
What's this group say? Anyone say other than C? Which is B4? Anyone think it's, could be A4 or A5? No? I mean, they're on the same side. Right? These A's are all on the same side, and these habitats are right next to each other.
maybe
So, you still want to say B4 or not A something? Yes. Yeah. Okay, you're correct. Because, who wants to explain why B4 is most closely related to A4?
My reasoning was because they happened at the same time.
Okay, they happened at the same time. They've been evolving for a long time. Let's say they've been evolving for maybe 8 million, 7 million years, but it takes a long time sometimes. Okay? It took a long time just to speciate, and then now they keep evolving. But they still have genes that started off as the same one. Okay? And it's because they're adapt to their environment, their habitat. A3 is at a different habitat. They're going to be genetically very different than A4. See? And A3 though is going to be very similar to B3. B3 and B4 are going to be very different from each other. They've adapted in different environments. That make sense? Okay.
well kind of makes sense.
Now, number two, which of these habitats is likely to harbor the youngest species? Youngest means what?
Most recently.
Yeah, most recently diverged. Okay? So, I mean, they're not, I'm 12 years old and you're 15, okay. It's not bad.
yeah.
They get into
Youngest
wild,
geological.
it has to
So, do you want to talk about it? Or someone wanted to, who's not sure what it should be? Because it's important that we know, if you think that you're sure what it is or isn't, we want to find that out, because you may have a reasoning that is helpful to the rest of us of why you're wrong or why you're right. Your reasoning might be important. You might be taking into consideration things that we didn't think of, that might pop up in a test, and boy, we're sure happy that we got it out of the open before the test. Because a test really, you know, when we develop a test, we put a question, then we have to put the right answer down, obviously. And then we have to say, okay, now what answers would they most get confused with? Let's see, they might think that in order to figure this out, they have to do this and this. So we're going to put this answer in case they think they have to do that. Or they might think that this is a rule, so we'll put that answer down. We're going to put this answer down because it looks better than the correct answer. It's easier to say, it's a fancier word. And then we're going to put this choice down because none of them will know what it is. And because if they're having trouble with the question, they're familiar with these other terms, they'll say, it must be the term I don't know. So those are called distractors. The distractors are trying to poke into your head and to see how you're analyzing this and how we can pick out what distracted you. Okay? So your questions, your comments are important to eliminate those distractors. Okay? So, which of these habitats is likely to harbor the youngest species? Who wants to answer that one? Who wants to go for an answer? E? Okay. Does everyone agree? You disagree? What's wrong with E? You're agreeing? Okay. Why can't it be B1? It can. But do you see it as a choice?
No.
Does it mean that A1 is wrong? No. Just because you don't see the counterpart there as well, doesn't mean it's incorrect. I have at least put the correct answer down, see? It's not asking for both. Did you come up with both? So that might be a distractor to some of you. You might reason your way out of that because you don't see B1 down there. You're going to be looking for A1 and B1, and it's not there. See? Okay? Good. Number 3, which habitats would harbor snapping shrimp species with the greatest degree of genetic divergence from each other? The greatest degree. We talk this over if you need to.
Yeah, A1,
Well, B,
Because they're on different
because the
sides.
grade is about equal amount.
And the shrinks, the difference of that. So they're different on
and they're different than how you see
Snapping shrimp degree of
A1 to B1 and A5 to B5.
They never started off with one.
It has to be B1.
yeah, they have the grade.
So
What do you think? Who says A is correct? Who says B is correct? Who says C is correct? Who says D is correct? Who says E is correct? Okay. Now, let me try something here. Are A1 and A5 different from each other?
Yes.
A1 and B5 different from each other?
Yes.
Has A1 diverged from A5? Meaning, was it once like an A5, but then speciated to an A1?
Yes.
No. They're in different habitats. They were never the same species. They started off as being different. Okay? Diverged, the key here is genetic divergence. That can only happen with the same genetics and diverging from that genetics. The only one that would be the same genetics is A5 and B5. Or A4 and B4 with a slight divergence. A3 and B3 with a slighter divergence. A2 and B2 with a slighter still divergence. And A1 and B1 with a divergence but very difficult to measure. So, Remember, you got lost because you didn't understand the word divergence. Meant coming from this exact same species. You diverged from that species, you didn't diverge from a different species. These are different species due to their habitats. Okay? So, sometimes not knowing the meaning of or brushing over the meaning of one word could change your answer and you will get it wrong. And you won't know why you missed it because you don't understand one word. So that's why in this class, make sure you learn vocabulary and you know exactly what those words mean. That's why I try to give you enough vocabulary define evolution, define natural selection. I give you enough practice so that I can pick at that and say, well, don't forget this, and don't forget that. Try to sharpen your vocabulary. Okay? So you're going to be doing the rest of these. In fact, I'll open up the allopatric shrimp quiz for you so you can practice. Okay? It'll say allopatric shrimp quiz, and then you can do the others. They'll be scrambled, okay? And then you can practice, but it's the same exercise. Okay? And you can do that at home. Okay? So we'll see you tomorrow. What's your lab tomorrow? What are you doing tomorrow? Bacteria. So make sure you bring some